Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast, where we talk about struggles and celebrations that leaders and entrepreneurs experience on their journey to success. I'm your host, Kristina, and I'm passionate about helping you achieve massive amounts of success at work and at home. We'll talk about all things people and organizational wellness, share relatable stories, and feature insightful guests because quality people and processes are at the heart of every success story. Ready to learn, grow, and have fun? Let's dive in. Hello, it's Kristina. This is part 2 of an amazing conversation with Dana K. White, who is an author, podcaster, and creator of the No Mess Decluttering Process. It was such a fun conversation that we went rather long. So if you haven't listened to part 1 yet, go back and listen to the previous episode because we introduce her, we talk about her 5-step decluttering process, and really get into kind of just who she is, why she does what she does. And now in part 2, we're going to go in a little bit deeper and really get into how she's helping people beyond just decluttering, and both in terms of emotional and coaching them and getting over some of those thoughts that we talk about that get in our way, and spiritually as well. So if you haven't listened to episode 1 in the series yet, then hop back to the last podcast episode, listen to that, and then join us here for the rest of our conversation. And if you've already listened to episode 1, enjoy the wrapping up of this conversation, and I hope it blesses you as much as it blessed me.
All right. Well, which one are you willing to get rid of in order to keep this gum wrapper? Is this gum wrapper good enough to keep instead of the water bottle cap that you had this, some other idea? Like we go through that process instead of it being a thing. And then they are the ones facing reality. This process is really just about facing reality. Okay. And somewhere along this process, a lot of people will say, when I say, let's take it there now, that's when they go, actually, nah, because they don't want to take it there now. They don't want to walk over there. Right. So like that part of the process. But if not, let's walk all the way over there. Well, seeing that I have crazy high pile of things like used gum wrappers might be the thing that makes them go, actually, yeah, I can get rid of this. Or going through the process, okay, what are you willing to get rid of in order to make the, so that we don't leave this space any worse? Yes, it needs to be dealt with, but we're not doing that right now. But how are we going to not leave it worse? What are you willing to do? Then that, even if they just get rid of a pen cap in order to leave the gum wrapper there, well, that pen cap is going to go in the trash, and that house is one step forward. So I think it's that removing of the emotions from the project, that's from the process. That's where the container concept is so incredibly powerful, because, which I didn't know that when I first was like, wait, containers are meant to contain? Like now I see how powerful it is, because I'm like, this is your space. Whatever you want to keep that will fit, go for it. But if you try to keep more than will fit in this space, there is no hope of your space ever being under control. It's just a fact. And so it's like, you can keep anything, but you can't keep everything and your space be under control. And something about that, like this process is not going to be me rejecting my stuff. It's not going to be me finally agreeing with that person who told me I was dumb to keep gum wrappers. Like, because that turns into a power struggle. And I'm like, well, I was kind of iffy about the gum wrappers before, but now that you told me that it's dumb to keep them, then I'm keeping them forever. I mean, that's just my personality, right? Like I was going to say for good or for bad, but
it's a lot of people though. And
yeah.
What I love about that, and I hear you do this on your podcast when you've got your kindred spirits on, is that they bring up this like unique thing, and they bring up this hard thing, and you gently bring them back to the process. You acknowledge their stress and their difficulty with it. You bring them back to the process, and then you walk them through so they just have choices. So ultimately, they're owning the result, which is huge, which is what I train my leaders to do, which is what we have to help others do, and we have to do it ourselves. We have to be kind to ourselves. So when you have this beautiful process to go back to, you can kindly and gently help people come back to it, and then say, now you're directing a little bit, and you're saying, well, these are the 2 choices. This is where we have to go. And then they do it because they do want to do it. And same with like team members want to be better. They want to do a good job at work.
most of it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's the thing too, is like, with kids and stuffed animals, let's say that there's kids and stuffed animals. Here's the container. You've put all your favorite ones in there first. We got rid, we donated the ones that didn't fit off to, children who need these. And this is so great. And then they get a new one, and then they find their favorite stuffed animal, that they've been missing for a year and it was under the whatever, like they find that. And then it used to be like, oh no,
Yes.
like, oh no, what do I do? Because I just figured this out and now I can't. And it's like, I get to be the one to say, oh, of course you can keep it. Which one are you willing to get rid of in order to make the room for this one? And then they say, oh, well, I can't get rid of any of those. Oh, I'm so sorry. And I get to feel the pain with them. It is hard. It is not fun. It is not exciting. It is not something I love, that not everything will fit in my house. I don't live in Harry Potter. I mean, I just don't, things don't expand because I want to keep more stuff. Right. And so that, not live in Harry Potter, live in, you know what I mean? But anyway, I'm a words person, but like that, it lets me, they get to feel all the feelings. And that's what's so funny is sometimes people be like, well, so I'm not allowed to use emotions. I'm like, oh, absolutely. You can feel the emotions. This process allows you to feel emotions, allows you to have emotional attachments, but not use those emotions to make the decisions. So they will influence what you decide, but the emotions are not the deciding factor. The deciding factor is the facts. Where would you look for it first? That's a fact.
Yeah.
It's not a choice. It's a literal instinct fact of where you would go first. You might get it wrong, but you're generally going to at least go with the second place where you would look. And that's the goal of being organized, right? Is to find things in the place where you look for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Taking that emotion out of the decision is so huge. And it
yes.
It feels hard.
Yeah.
Doable.
Yeah, exactly.
So awesome. So you didn't start with that book necessarily. You started with the Managing Your House Without Losing Your Mind book, right? So tell us a bit about that one. That's about habits and whatnot.
Yeah. So that one is, that's the book I pitched when I thought I was only ever going to write one book. That was the one, was like, this is the book for the completely and totally overwhelmed person like I was, who I just looked around my house. I was like, I don't know why this is so hard. I think I'm doing what the people whose houses look great are saying that they're doing, and my house is a total disaster. And so like, that was it, which the core of that is habits or maintenance tasks or whatever. The word habits, I always have to clarify, because I always thought that once something became a habit, I would do it without realizing I was doing it.
Yeah.
And that has never happened. Like, I've never gone, oh my word, did I just wash my dishes? That's never happened. Yeah. So I, that thing of like, oh, you're going to get to this point and then all of a sudden I don't realize I've done the work. Oh no, that's not going to happen. But I actually refer to them as pre-made decisions. Like, I have done the analysis. I have figured out what does work and what happens when I don't do that thing. And so it's a pre-made decision that I'm going to wash my dishes every night, or I'm going to do a 5-minute pickup. It's not something I have to go, should I do that today? I'm just going to do it. Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to talk myself into it, but I am going to do it because I know it has to be done. So those habits I used to put off because I have a project brain. I love things that have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And those are things I'm good at. Excel in those types of things. And so I'd always try to take that and apply that to my home. And that meant that I would do things like, everybody go away for a weekend so I can clean the house. I'm going to clean it from top to bottom. I'm going to take everything off my schedule to, focus on this. And then I would do that. I would clean it from top to bottom, usually for a party or whatever. And then I would, because I was thinking of it as a project, I'd be like, well, I'm done now. And then it would go right back to being worse than it was before within a few days. And so because I thought of anything that was like, it didn't make sense to me to do 5-minute pickups when 5 minutes was not going to get my whole house picked up. Like, shouldn't I get all this figured out? Shouldn't I get my house under control first and then start doing 5-minute pickups? Shouldn't I, doing the dishes every day? Okay, I should really start doing that after I get my house under control. Well, that logically made sense to me. Like, anything that was a maintenance task, I was like, well, I don't want to maintain this, so why would I do it now? But in reality, when I started, I was so far gone. I was like, I don't know what to do. But I know that people whose houses are under control don't have kitchens that look like mine. They don't have to spend 5 hours in the kitchen every time they say they're going to clean the house, and then they never get to the rest of the house. That was what happened to me. I would never get to the rest of the house because I'd use up all my time and energy on the kitchen. So I was like, I'm just going to try to keep the dishes done. Not even the kitchen clean, just keep the dishes done. And I saw this shocking, powerful impact of keeping the dishes done and how that like applied to the whole rest of the house. And it just kept the house from getting out of control. And so those maintenance tasks, that's what that book is about. Like, what are the things that I have to do? What are all my resistances to those things? What have I over logicalized to the point where it's not logical anymore about these things that I've had all these reasons why it made sense to not do this thing. And I tackled all of that and said, so these are the things that matter, which, one of the things I talk about is it was not helpful to me when people would say, the first step of getting your house under control is making your bed, which it makes sense, right? Like I get it. And there's a mental thing and all, and I mean, like, it's great to make your bed. Like I'm always happy when I did. But I can absolutely sleep at the exact same time I was going to sleep, just as well as I was going to sleep if I didn't make my bed. Like it does not grind my life to a halt to not have made my bed. I can tell you this for sure, for a fact, right? This is not a hypothesis. But if I don't do my dishes, things grind to a halt. When we don't have plates to eat off of, it grinds to a halt. When the counters are covered in dirty dishes, it grinds making dinner to a halt. It means I can't open the front door. I'm embarrassed if somebody shows up, or if somebody needs something, all these things. And so for me, it was so important to drill down to what has to be done. Like, don't tell me what should be done. Let's talk about what has to be done. And so that's what that book is. Yeah.
I feel like that's very applicable because there's a lot of business owners, there's a lot of entrepreneurs that, like me myself, I don't like doing the QuickBooks end of it, and I don't like, like there's bits and bobs that we tell ourselves these stories, and there's so much to be had with, like, the way you put it, these pre-made decisions. This is what I'm going to do. This is how long it's going to take. Like just whatever it needs to be to get yourself over that hump of like dreading procrastination again, dreading it, not doing it, and then having a big mess at the end of the year to clean up before you get yourself to your account.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to get into your newest book, the Doesn't Care About Your Messy House, because that book is a bit different than the rest.
Yeah.
And so tell us about like how this book came about, kind of what you touch on through it.
So I wrote How to Manage Your Home Without Losing Your Mind. That was the book I pitched as like, this is maybe the only book I'll ever write. But the publisher came back with a 2-book contract and said, we want you to write that book and another one. We didn't know what the second one was going to be. That was a whole crazy story, but ended up being Decluttering at the Speed of Life, which, can I brag for a second?
Yeah, please.
I just got a call. It's probably been a month and a half ago from it was Friday afternoon. And my publisher called and said, hey, we just got word that Decluttering at the Speed of Life has sold over 500,000 copies, which is insane.
Yeah.
I mean, like whoever thought that little book, but that book that I didn't even know I was going to write has been the one that has paid for my kids' college, so like that's really, it was kind of like, what else is there to write? That's what I thought. I was like, what else is there to write about this? I've covered the basics of the habits. I've covered decluttering. I don't really get into organizing. And so, and I'm a Christian, and throughout this process, God had really been growing me. I had been growing spiritually a lot, but not the way that I assumed it would happen when I started this process. Like, as a Christian woman, that I had always added an extra layer of like, but I'm passionate about my home and my family and all this kind of stuff, and yet I cannot seem to do this thing. And so I had thought, when I started what I call my deslopification process, that at some point God was going to say, here it is. Here's the verse or the concept or something that you haven't gotten before. There you go. Now you're organized. I always thought there was something I was missing. What have I not read? And instead, what God had showed me through the process was, this was never what I was worried about. I just want your heart. The spiritual part of the process for me was being willing to make this the thing that my career is built on. that was the spiritual part for me, was to say, okay, first of all, God, this is what you want from me. Are you kidding me? Like, my actual thing that's my most embarrassing, shameful secret about myself that I tried to hide from people, that's what you want to use? I'm like, okay, like that was the spiritual thing, was me being willing to say, whatever you want to do, God, in whatever way you want to do it, okay, I'm here for that. And so, growing, and I have been a Christian, since I was a young child, but really growing spiritually and understanding the reality of God's grace and the futility of me thinking that I'm the one who's done anything to get me closer to God. It's only what he's already done for me, right? And so in growing that, I was like, I'd really love to write a book about the spiritual stuff, because that's what matters, right? Like that is the thing that matters. Like, if nothing else matters other than that.
Exactly.
And and so I was like, I really want to write about that. But my first two books, even though they were with a Christian publisher, I had been very adamant. I was like, I'm not putting spiritual stuff in this, because that is very confusing for the woman like me, or man, but primarily it's women, who struggled and was like, and it had turned into a spiritual issue. If I, give all these practical things of how to do it, how to declutter, how to get your house under control, and then I throw in some spiritual stuff, that's where a lot of confusion had happened for me personally. Because I was like, hey, but if I still can't do this thing, then now all of a sudden this is a spiritual failure. And, like that. So it was just very important to me for that was what God had shown me, was like, this is not a spiritual failure. It's just how I made you. You got to figure out what actually works with the brain that I gave you. Right. And so I had not put the spiritual stuff in there, but I was like, I really want to write about spiritual things. And I was thinking, but not about, like, because I didn't want to combine those two things.
Yeah.
I was like, I guess I would have to just kind of start a whole nother career of writing and write about spiritual stuff. And then I was on vacation, which is generally when things download into my brain, because I'm, a little different brain space. And I mean, I literally remember where I was standing when the thing that actually downloaded to my brain from God, I believe, was Jesus doesn't care about your dirty dishes. And I was like, oh yeah. And it became Jesus doesn't care about your messy house. But that was it. It was like all the things I wanted to talk about. Like, do you understand the power of God's grace? And do you understand the futility of my trying to be self-sufficient, and like how much freedom that had given me and all this? And yet God had given me this particular platform. And I was like, okay, I can write the book that I passionately want to write, sharing the message I want to share, and have it work with my actual platform, because those are the people that God has given me to share to. And so it's a book about grace. It's just using this particular, strangely divisive, for a lot of people, a real shame. I knew that from personal experience. This was a major source of shame for me, using this particular thing as the example to explore God's grace. And so that I worked on it for 5 years. I actually finished the very first draft in February of 2020. So yeah, I mean, you just have to say that February of 2020, everybody's like, oh, we get it, And I really felt like God was like, and I thought that after spring break, I would finish it up, because I really wanted to not write it on a deadline. I did not want it to be your normal deadline kind of assignment for nonfiction. So, and I really felt like God was saying, you're not going to get back to it right away. And I was like, why? And then, so anyway, we all know what happened. And I didn't get back to it. And then my publisher came to that Decluttering at the Speed of Life, I guess at that point, anyway, had hit 100,000 copies. So my publisher was like, oh, because before that they'd been like, okay, so yeah, then it hit 100,000 copies and they're like, oh, this book is, so they started paying attention. And then they came to me and said, do you want to write Organizing for the Rest of Us, which is what they call a gift book, and it's got pictures and it's basically like a tip format of the other two books. And I was like, sure, I'll do that. So I did that. So that took a little time, and then time goes on, and I finally was like, I need to get under contract for this to make sure it actually finishes. And so then I put that back out. So it's my heart in a book. And it's also kind of that full circle of why it was that God wanted me to write about this particular subject, and I don't know if you've seen the reviews, but I mean, there's a lot of non-Christians who've read this book. because we're friends, you know,
Yeah.
like they would never read a book with Jesus in the title, but they read it because they're friends. They listen to my podcast or whatever. And that's why it was so important to me to put Jesus in the title, because I am not a bait and switch kind of a person. And I'm like, it needs to be very clear. And yet some people are like, wait, this book is about Jesus. And I'm like, I don't know how you missed that with that title, but okay. You know, like I tried really hard. I tried really hard that you would know exactly what you're getting into when you read this book.
What I love about it is like you've really just gotten into like how God is using us, and he's using our weaknesses or those things where we need him to show us that we need him. And it is such a beautiful thing. And yeah.
Which can ultimately make me thankful for my weakness. I don't love it. I still don't love that this is my natural tendency to be messy, but it is a constant reminder of my inability to, you know, be perfect. I can't.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I think one thing that kind of hit me is like the fact that this was this piece of shame, this piece that you were very ashamed of, and that by looking at it, talking about it, bringing it out into the light to get the stank out.
Yeah.
But by doing that, like it was grace filled and now whole career. So it was touching to me.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
But you know, I look back and I go, what I was gonna write about, I would have ended up with only Christian women as my followers, you know, on a blog or whatever. Like what I had thought would be the thing I would write about which would be fine, right? Like there's definitely something for that. But I, as a child, always wanted to be a missionary, you know, like, you know, you sometimes have these conversations and I was always like, this is what I would say as a little kid, because this is how my brain works. I was like, I wouldn't want to be a pastor's wife because a pastor's wife is a pastor's wife, but a missionary's wife is a missionary. That's what I always like said. You know, I was like, I want to be the one like sharing. I want to be the one sharing about Jesus. And so I feel like this gave, you know, this platform that God had in mind all along was meant to be one with, I mean, I love my people, you know, I love all of my people. And I would say probably half are not Christians. And I love them just as much. And because I love them, I want to share my faith, right? But I wanted, so this book was the opportunity to do that.
Amazing. And for faith-filled business owners and leaders, that it's just proof that we can bring the faith in. Faith is happening at work, even though I know from my upbringing of work, I guess you could say like it was very separate. I took separation of church and state very seriously. But the reality is it does intersect, and when we can grow here and when we can take care of our spiritual wellness, it's going to make our businesses flourish because now God's on our side. Now he's there with us. He's pushing it. And it's just such a great example of that.
Well, and being honest is so much more fun. You know, that was the whole reason I thought I had to get my house under control before I could start writing, because I thought if I'm trying to write about, you know, beautiful, great things, and I felt like I had to hide my house, that doesn't go with my personality, right? Like I'm just not a hider. Part of that comes like I just don't put it out there, you know, like I'll just avoid the thing so that I don't have to share the thing. But I'm like, if I'm sharing about motherhood and raising kids and all this kind of stuff, and your house is kind of part of that, and I'm like, I wouldn't want to feel like I had to hide that or live in fear that someone would find out the truth. And so there's just so much freedom and power in, let's just be honest, because that's necessary anyway for, you know, God to come in. Like you said, the shining the light on this issue is key.
Yeah, totally. And that ability to be vulnerable, like as leaders, business owners, and all of that, sharing those struggles is going to help your team as well. And I know your vulnerability has helped your audience, has helped your clients, has helped me. I know that. And just saying, hey, this is hard and that's okay. And I'm here with you. I've been it.
And I think too, like one of the things that I find as far as like helping people, it is so easy to speak in generalities and feel like, well, I'm saying it. I may not actually be including how I had to apply that in my own life because that would make me vulnerable. So I'm just going to speak in generalities, but generalities I don't believe are helpful. It's the nitty-gritty and the specifics where people actually find hope and help, but you have to be vulnerable to get down to those nitty-gritty things.
Yeah. Like it's such a thing though with communication. Like I've observed that our pastor, like he likes to tell us all the facts and all that. And I like that. Not everybody likes that. I like that. But he's recently started sharing when I did this and when I did that. And people are like paying more attention and they get it. And it's like you feel like he's one with you and you feel like, okay, he's a real human and it's real. And now you can see it make sense. And again, that storytelling, that experience, those real life situations are going to help people come along with you.
And I think that's the, in the Jesus Doesn't Care About Your Messy House, that book, having this very specific issue to talk about, because we can talk about, Jesus' forgiveness and his grace and his, nothing is beyond his forgiveness and his grace. But it's very easy to like think inside your head, I get it. Oh, well, not that, about myself or about other people. So like bringing one of those, because I think this is one of those subjects, because I get that from a lot of people who hear the title of the book and they don't know what I do. They don't understand. And they're just like, but people don't want to have that conversation that ultimately Jesus does not care about your messy house. I'm not saying your messy house doesn't matter. I'm saying, let's don't make that a spiritual issue. Like that is not the thing that is getting you closer to him. And so like it gives the opportunity to really go deep into that because we're being so specific.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Well, Dana, thank you so much for this lovely conversation. I have felt like I've known you for years.
Well, you have. I'm glad to get to know you.
Be able to converse with you. So thank you so much for sharing your gifts and sharing your knowledge and your lessons in life and your beautiful writing.
Thank you. This is very fun. I appreciate very much you having me on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And to the listeners, thank you for enjoying the episode. If you liked today's episode, please like it, share it with a friend, make a comment on the YouTube and leave a review because that's how we get the word out there. And I will see you in the next episode of the Business Building Blocks podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you found value in our conversation, please leave a quick review, like, or share. It helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. For more resources and insights, visit KristinaSchmitt.ca, where you can find tools and support to empower your leadership journey. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.